Hello, Hockey World. It is Monday, March 1st, 2021.
I'm Michael Agello, and screw you, February.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching the Hockey Buzzcast on the HockeyBuzzcast.com. No, on HockeyBuzz.com.
What are we doing?
I do this every day the same exact way. It's the first time I ever messed up that part. You have to admit it. You're watching Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time or sometime in the afternoon, but usually around this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we are joined today by a good friend and a really interesting guy who started what I honestly think is like the go-to website for salary cap stuff, and you know, which you know in Hockey Buzz we love, and that is Hart Levine from Puckpedia. Hello, Hart. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. No, thanks for coming on. It always fascinates me because there have been we've seen, like, you know, I'm old, right? Because I've been doing this now, you know, hockey blogging for 15 years. That's like forever.
I've been doing it all longer, but again.
Yeah, you're a little bit older than me even. And Mike's right there too. Like Mike started right off the bat as well. But you know, I remember when salary caps were, you know, were taboo. We never knew what they were. You know, and then maybe somebody had them, and we've seen all the different NHL numbers and cap geeks and cap numbers and cap
general manager.
I remember so many things, but I think what you do, I just think what I like about Puckpedia is like you really have it laid out well, and you're also very good on Twitter too. Like that's the other thing. You just should follow Puckpedia on Twitter because you're good at getting stuff out there right away.
I just did.
How did you get started in this, Hart?
Well, I was a fan of hockey for many years, and definitely a numbers guy. So I was really into the contracts, and it's like most fans, you think you're smarter than your team's GM. And once the salary cap started, like if you want to start either criticizing moves or daydreaming about the moves that your team should make, you got to know the salary cap numbers. And so, yeah, I think I started when it first started. NHL Numbers, I think, was the first one, and then obviously Cap Geek, and I just into that and into the CBA information and rules, and I just got to a point where I wanted to do something in the hockey world since I was so passionate about it. And as a fan, I just found that there wasn't a site that had that information laid out in a way that was sort of accessible to more of a casual fan. And I wanted a bunch of information all in one place instead of having to flip between different sites. So that's why we have the salary cap stuff, but there's also basic and advanced stats. There's injury news. So just the goal was to have a sort of one-stop shop for hockey fans, and figured if I built a site that I wanted to use as a fan, hopefully others would like it as well.
And Hart, let me just say that what you said about fans being smarter than general managers, I think in probably half the markets they are.
No, let's be.
I'm just kidding.
All right,
but we're going to get into Buffalo later. but that's for sure. And I think it's great. It's a great service, and it's and you and I have been talking on Twitter for a while now, back and forth on direct messages on Twitter, just because it's nice to see something that really. I think you're right when you say you built like the site that you'd want, because you built the site that I'd want to. I was really just impressed with it. And it's not for everyone. And I think it's smart. I've always said this: if you're going to get into the hockey world, when people come to me like, "How should I get started writing for hockey?" I always said, the best thing you can do is, and I think we're all kind of an example of that on this podcast, at least, is find the niche and become that niche. Like Russ is obviously, the prospect stuff, the prospect show for years on XM, and the prospect stuff that he's done forever. Mike's niche is the Maple Leafs, which, is not really a niche, but and mine are rumors. And yeah, it's just, if you find a niche, you can kind of own that space. I think that's what you're doing really well. That's cool.
Oh, thanks. The part that's been great too is I thought I knew a decent amount about the salary cap and the rules, but it's a lot different when you have to have a site that has everything calculated all the time. And then really people like media asking me questions or fans asking me questions. It's good because it forces me to dig into some areas that I hadn't thought about, or maybe I thought I understood, but it's much different when there's like a real practical question of how it works. And so it's been really rewarding to sort of build up my knowledge that way and make some good relationships.
Are you implying you're on the internet? Go ahead, Russ.
I was going to say, once you ask the fans' opinion, be prepared to change them. Like that's guaranteed.
Are you implying that people on the internet can be critical, Russ?
Just stating a fact.
Well, for at least for me, they asked me lots of good questions. That we have an Ask the Capologist section, so there's
Yeah,
lots
like
of good
that.
questions. But I do get, I'd probably say once every week or so, a question of what happens if a team's over the salary cap, like
Mhm.
just some of the basic ones that
Yeah, right,
can
right.
just
And
refer
yeah,
them like, hey, this has been asked 12,000 times before. You can go look at the answer here. But no, there's some really good questions, I get stumped, and then I have to really do
yeah.
some more research and look into it or ask some questions, and it's
Or
so
ask
it's
an
good.
agent.
Exactly. Ask the agent, ask a team capologist for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so one day, what happens when the Vancouver Canucks come calling and say, "Hey, we'd like you to be a capologist for us."
I don't know. I'm sure I would listen.
Because I mean, I think honestly, it's funny. There are very few people who are qualified for that job, and you're definitely doing what is the training for that job. And it's
There are
interesting.
teams in the league that actually don't have a guy with that title.
Yeah, it's really true. It's always
You'd be
amazing. Like,
surprised, actually.
we've seen so many people, like the Corsi guy, the different guys, that I never thought would be working for teams, that were working for teams, because they got, they could do something better than that team could do it. You probably have more knowledge about this than others. So that's
Yeah,
probably
like
your eventual future.
I would just say, like in other sports that have had a salary cap for longer, like that, it's always just sort of behind the curve in other sports, right? So, other sports had big analytics departments, and then
Yeah.
NHL started with like one analytics guy, and then it started to like build into a team.
Yeah.
And like the NBA, the NFL, they have salary cap teams like of lawyers, accountants, and statistics type people. And again, the NHL, it's like most teams have one person, some have someone that does that along with other things. So I think it's just an evolution, and eventually, I'm sure in the NHL we'll get to where there's like a team of different skill sets just handling the CBA salary cap. But NHL is always kind of behind to adapt to that.
Well, as long as you have like the Brian Burks of the world, and these great guys who are just not too thrilled about having everybody telling them what to do. It's a little tricky. It gets a little tricky. But yeah, I think it's great. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, wanted to talk about sort of the evolution of information with teams regarding contracts. If you remember, I think it was like 2 years ago, teams were still holding the terms of deals close to the vest. Now they're
still.
Yeah, but now I think you've seen a growing number of teams that will give the breakdown. They'll give 3-year, $3.5 million AAV, and then they'll give the signing bonus and the breakdown. I mean, they're more forthcoming now because I think they know eventually it's going to get out anyway, so they may as well put the information out there right at the top.
For sure. Yeah. Like there's definitely a handful of teams that will give it all. Some teams will give just sort of like the number of years on the cap hit, and some teams will say like, we signed this player, terms not disclosed, which I think is pretty silly. And for me, like I have to have it all on the website and all accurate. So like it is such a hassle when I'm trying to track down, what the base and signing bonuses for a 6th round pick that just signed an entry level deal. So I would love for that stuff to be released. Like the bigger contracts, sometimes it's kind of good to get the breakdown out first, but honestly, it would just be easier if they release it all, and then it would save a lot of time digging into it, which, it's sort of useful for fans, but I don't think it needs to be like a state secret because eventually it comes out. So I agree.
Well, the question I have is how helpful, if at all, are the players' representatives when it comes to those details? Because, I mean, obviously it has cap ramifications, and I'm sure for other players that use comparable numbers that they want to find out what players are making. So how helpful are they to get that information out?
Yeah, just like everything, most are quite helpful. Some are a little helpful, and some, aren't interested in helping at all. But I mean, the biggest thing I'll find is like
that's Alan Walsh, by the way.
If the most common thing will be like if let's say a bunch of reporters are reporting a signing, but the team hasn't officially released it.
Okay.
The agents might not want to share like the details yet, but as soon as the team puts out whatever their press release is, then the agents may be a little bit more forthcoming, or even the team personnel might be more forthcoming. Yeah, really it's hit or miss, but I find most agents are pretty helpful. And I think what helps me in particular is on the website, I have all the agent information and the agent leaderboard. So the agents are pretty competitive. And so they want to, especially if it's their client, they want to make sure that they're sort of getting the full credit for the new contract and see it reflected in the leaderboard. So I think that motivation helps them, be a little more helpful with me.
Yeah, it's really good stuff because I mean, gosh, forever we were trying to guess And I know the teams didn't want it out there for a very long time for reasons that made sense, for them economically. And I always was wondering who would be the first to push it. But I think what's kind of nice, honestly, if I'm you, is I kind of like the fact that it's still hard to get, because that makes you more valuable as well. Like it actually does. I mean, if it was just posted on the NHLPA website, it would be a different story. So that. Speaking as a person who now watches teams write rumors about themselves, I have to say that you're a pretty good shape.
That's a fair point for sure.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing.
Well,
at all.
I do want to announce that on the agent leaderboard, Alan Walsh is not even in the top 10.
No?
I'm gonna get a message from him now.
Yeah, you probably will.
As long as you don't get a sword through your back.
The Puckpedia logo.
Yeah, there you
Alan
go.
Walsh, like many agents, like the Rich Winters of the world and stuff like that, are the most interesting and the most confusing and the most difficult at times. But it's tough to. I've had my own stories, but we want to go into them. I'm not going to talk about them. I want to talk about last before you go. I want to talk about we'd like to make you the official capologist of the Hockey Buzzcast too. So when we have questions, can we come to you? Is that okay?
Of course, yeah. Hopefully I don't get stumped, but that would be great.
Excellent.
So we have to look everything up, so you can't do
We
any
need
more.
that. We need this more than you know. Also, the other thing you've been doing, which is really good, is that the Show Me the Money podcast, which is you're doing with Jonathan Davis. You guys are both out in LA. Jonathan Davis, who I really admire as well too, and he does a great job on XM on the weekends. And I can't recommend a podcast more than this. Like you guys, and it's definitely niche. Obviously, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, you're interested in the business of hockey, this is your thing. But you've had a lot of good people on there, a lot of good agents. You've had your interview with Brian Burke, though, right before, it was like a couple weeks before he got hired for the Penguins, was really one of the best. I've had lunch with Berkey several times. It was one of the best interviews I've ever heard from with him. I mean, just like as far as on the radio and him being him, being actually how he is. It was great stuff.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's same approach with the podcast as the website. I wanted to do interviews or discussions where the information would be interesting to me. So some of the guys, like a Berkey, he's out there doing a lot of media, or he was doing a lot of media. So I really want to ask about things that you wouldn't normally hear him talk about, like, are just sort of the normal sound clip. So we got some insight into how he negotiates and how some of the relationships work. And so, really, when you hear those interviews, those are really the things that I'm interested in. So I just hope that others are as well. So like the questions with the agents, I like to learn a lot about, how they approach a negotiation, or what contracts or deals they're like the most proud of, how they get clients, things like that. But with the Penguins job, it was really interesting. We had Berkey on, and then we had Mike Fuda on, and he interviewed. So Fuda interviewed for the GM job, and Berkey got hired as the president's job. So it was really kind of tied into the search. It worked out pretty well.
No, yeah, and that's another one. Great. Mike Fuda. These are two really great guys to talk to in general. So Fuda is amazing too.
And we just recorded with Bruce Boudreau, so that'll come out in a couple of days.
Another one, yeah.
I'm sure that one will be boring.
Yeah, again, he's been doing more media, so I was thinking, again, what's sort of more interesting than what you can't get somewhere else. So I asked him questions like, what do you have to do when a guy with a big cap hit needs to be scratched? Like, how do you handle that? How do you tell players are getting sent down? Just things that hopefully other people aren't asking, and really trying to share the insight into what it's like to be a coach in the NHL.
Well, I'm actually, the one thing I learned about agents, because I speak to a few of them every once in a while, is I think they do get a lot of business word of mouth, because some of them have a lot of American players. Some of them, there's always a niche for the agents too. Like Eck was saying, there's a niche for us.
Oh, for sure. And they'll kind of maybe infiltrate's not the right word, but they'll get in with let's say a WHL team, and there's like a handful of guys, or I'll see, because now a lot of them will let me know if they've taken over a client that's in the NHL, and I'll notice this one NHL team, all of a sudden 3 guys on that team just switched to a new agent over the period of a couple months. So the relationships are a big part of it, because they don't really, how would you market to every young hockey player? You have to
a website's not enough.
No, for sure.
Yeah,
but I think now I've heard some stories. they're trying to show who their clients are to a potential young player, they'll send them their link on Puckpedia and show them their
great.
client list, because now it's more public information, right? So hopefully
go.
I'm helping. I haven't received any commissions on that though, but
I
Yeah,
hope,
you can ask for that.
And you won't.
I hope you didn't recommend to Bruce that he follow the page of Ralph Krueger when it comes to benching or not benching a star.
We're gonna get to that. That for sure. But I do think, it's interesting how the way you handle it is really, really strong and just completely. I just absolutely. I love reading it. I love going to it. I love your tweets, especially. Definitely check out follow Puckpedia on Twitter for sure. And thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it.
oh, thanks for the support and thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Sure thing. All right. Well, again, that's Art Levine from Puckpedia, and again, you can go to puckpedia.com and check it out. It's really good stuff. And I think of all the guys, it's the most like personal of all those like cap number type sites, which are
it's hard for a cap site to be personal, but I looked at it and I see what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's just that they handle it really well.
It's been very helpful. Like I said, he, because I have to say, Cap Friendly is excellent. They do a really good job. Puckpedia is just as good. And the one thing that they do that Cap Friendly doesn't do is they put the agents on the site, and that's very helpful. So because then you can, it saves you the research of having to go and dig around for those agents. And if you have to send an email and ask a question, you can to them, that information is readily available. So
and also the I really like the capologist thing he's got on there too.
But just as an example, don't ever think one email will get an answer back from Pat Brisson. They always answer, but there's layers for some of these agencies.
Oh, yeah, there's no question about it.
If you're a young writer, don't expect an answer back like from Pat Brisson. It's not going to happen.
No. You have to work. It's always way more important, I think, and way better in general to get in with smaller agents. Like, I've always found that to be the case. Like to get in with smaller agents, and who eventually some turn into big agents, and some
or know them when they're smaller, and then now realize they're in the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, we've all learned this, I think, and Mike's learned this lesson too. Like, covering the Marlies, like when you cover the AHL Marlies, when those players make it to the NHL, they remember you, and because no one else not many people are covering the AHL.
Yeah,
team.
but that can go both ways. They can remember how annoying you were with the Marlies, and then not have. Not that was the case, because I'm not annoying. But
no, you know what it is though. I'll be honest. Most of them appreciate the guys who show up all the time.
They do. They really do appreciate it. They know you got a job to do. They're hardworking guys too. They come from hardworking families. They really are. Like I was joking around before the show with you guys. Like, so Matthew Schneider's daughter is now friends with my daughter, and they're in the same sorority. And I never. So they were friends with each other for like the first 2 weeks. My daughter just got into the sorority this year, and they didn't know that either of them had like hockey connections at all.
Oh,
so
that's funny.
They're talking. I was like, oh yeah, my dad's a hockey writer. Oh really? My dad played in the NHL for a while. It's like, it's Matthew Schneider's daughter. And
I'll give you a quickie Matthew Schneider story. At that All-Star game in 2003 in LA, where they had like the charity All-Star game and everything, Matthew Schneider was there. I interviewed him and his wife, and I had just seen online that Matthew was actually inducted into like the Jewish Sports Hall of Fame. So I said to him, like the last question, I said, hey, by the way, I saw you were inducted into that. And he goes, I got to tell you something. He goes, my dad was as excited or more excited than I was. And since I was playing, I sent my dad to accept be there at the induction. And he said that was a thrill for him and me. And I said, that's cool. And, he's a very personable guy. He really is.
Oh, he's a great guy.
He'll talk to you.
And I've dealt with him on different levels, as a player, and then at the Player Association, because he works with big NHLPA too. He's like an assistant with one of Fair's consultant type guys, and also he's on the rules committee. If you remember, and remember the big thing with him, I think he was part of the big debate. I remember the most I've ever talked to him one-on-one was during the debate about goaltending interference, and whether it should be replayed or not, instant replay. I forget, there was a press conference they had somewhere. One of these, you were probably there. It was at NHL. It was at a final game or somewhere where they.
They had
a press conference about goaltending interference. And he was up there, with Marty Brodeur and all that, and they were just talking about this whole thing. And yeah, Schneider's great. So it's really just funny how
he's a smart guy. I mean, look, let's face it. He wasn't the fastest. He wasn't the guy with the best shot, but he had a really good career because he was smart. He knew what to do on the ice, so he probably does know a lot of the ins and outs still.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that, though, for me is like, so my daughter, like, I've met him, I've talked to him a couple times. He might not remember, he might remember me, but he definitely knows Ekman from Hockey Buzz,
Okay.
Because the guy played for like 10 or 12 teams. I wrote about rumors all the friggin' time with him because he was always on the move somewhere, here or there.
How old's his daughter?
His daughter would be the same as like 18, the age of my daughter.
Okay, so the picture I have to pull this out of
Yes,
Matthew and his wife. She may be holding that daughter because that's from 2003.
You got to send me that. That would be that. Yeah, because she would have been like 1.
I got to look for that. Yeah.
Send me that because but I always worry.
I have it at the tip of my fingers, just so you
I was
know.
worried. My daughter's. I said to my daughter, I'm like, he may not like me. It's very possible that he looks at me like a guy who just wrote about him in rumors all the time.
So next semester when she has Marty St. Louis' daughter and.
Right.
And Thomas Caberlet's daughter. There you go.
Yeah. So I went back and I started reading all the articles I could find that I wrote about him. Like I searched just Eklund and Snyder, and I wrote good things about him. And I always was writing teams really want him. That's why he's available. I never wrote anything like people were trying to dump him or anything like that. So I think I'm okay, but who knows?
All right.
Anyway, let's move on to the Buffalo Sabres. Okay,
because, we haven't talked about them enough.
Never talked about them, but today they need to be discussed because, and not just because they played the Flyers and I saw them for 2 straight games, watched them for 2 straight games, but just the way they played the Flyers.
Let me ask you the first question. Were you able to watch full games of the 2 first games? Honestly, I was not.
You were not for what? Just it was boring as hell?
It was just, I knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
I never thought for a minute the Sabres would have any kind of offense. And after a while, like in the middle of a third period, I would just tune out.
Sponsored by Sominex.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's an interesting point. This is too funny. I had to post this.
And I couldn't even give the Flyers
That's too funny of a quote. If Phil Wilczek had a daughter, I'd be concerned.
I wouldn't even give the Flyers goaltending 2 thumbs up either. It wasn't like it was bad. It's just they didn't have to do a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And they didn't. I mean, I thought Elliott had to do more than Hart.
Yes, Elliott had to do a little more. I grant
you. But and they hit them posts too. So it wasn't like perfect shutouts or something. I mean, they were though we talked about posts don't count, but still they were
were the Sabres ever in danger of getting a lead in any of those games? No,
they were never. It was never. No, and the Flyers just owned them for stretches. In the offensive zone, it looked like things that looked like power plays, but they were 5-on-5s. It's just really strange when that happens. It was very, it was kind of crazy. Just and when you and I wrote this in my blog, but I go back to Scoop Cooper, who we know really well, Russ, who's he's like the historian he's been around the Philadelphia Flyers.
He's been around forever.
1967. He was there for the first game they played in the Spectrum. He knows and he's there all the time. And when Mike Rathje made his famous blunder, that was like the last play he ever made as a Flyer. It was like a giveaway in overtime. It gave the Flyers ended up losing the game. It was an important game too, and we were walking out of a very quiet Wells Fargo building, and he turned to me and said, that is the play. That Fred Shearer used to say, that is the play, and that is the game that end men's careers. And I always thought that was the funniest thing. And Rathje never put a Flyer sweater on again. Right. And I always thought that was fascinating. When I watched those Sabres games, that's the feeling I had. I had these are the games and plays that end men's careers. This has to be changed. Like this is not an NHL team right now, and they're not playing. And then to hear and then I heard someone told me the Eichel story with Eichel being scratched the other night, and that he was scratched because of a lack of confidence, and that Eichel was acting insecure. And I thought to myself, Jack, there's one thing I would say about Jack Eichel.
No, I didn't see that. I'm not sure about that.
No, it was true.
No, first of all, and we touched on this on Friday. The messaging from Ralph Krueger regarding Eichel's injury is so convoluted.
Oh, I know.
I don't even think Ralph Krueger
behind the scenes. The thing was that Krueger felt like he was playing without confidence and wasn't acting confident around the team and was acting insecure, and that was what I heard from behind the scenes. And I heard it from a really good source, and I'm like, that to me was a shocking frigging revelation, because I have seen Eichel in many different situations, and I would never say
No, but all players
there's anything not confident about Jack Eichel.
No, but all players do lose confidence. I felt like Mika Zibanejad lost some confidence for a couple of weeks and got it back, in that game against Philly, and now he's been terrific. I think you can lose confidence.
Okay, yeah, you can, and okay, I'll read you this quote. It's very brief from Eichel after the game on Sunday, and I think it's reflective of somebody who's questioning the direction of the team and what's going on. He says, "Everyone's in the right mindset. It doesn't seem like we're very connected as a group. We just got to dig deep. I don't have a cliche answer for you right now. I'm trying to process this all myself. It's tough. If we had answers, we would be spitting them out. I think we're trying to figure it out as well. It's a really good group of guys in here, and we've stuck together, but it's definitely been tough so far." Okay, I'll just say this. The situation here is dire, but I don't know, other than trading rentals, whether anything will be addressed significantly until the end of the season. Yeah. They're not out of it mathematically. I think they're 9 points out of fourth place, but they're done. They're I mean,
you have to watch them play to realize that they're done, Mike. I mean, it's like watching them play, you realize that this is not a team that can compete.
No, but on top of that, Linus Ullmark is out for a month with I think it's a groin injury. They've lost two of their better young defensemen, Will Borgen and Jake McCabe is out for the rest of the year. But the things that are concerning is the top four paid players on the Sabres. The top four: Eichel, Hall, Skinner, Oposo. Total 3 goals.
Yeah, that's just astonishing.
This is $33 million in cap space, and you've got 3 goals. That's $11 million a goal. That's
There's a couple of statistics that are amazing about the Sabres. And one of them that has to be mentioned is that they are the best power play team in the NHL. And they're the number one power play team in the NHL, which is absolutely astonishing. And when you consider that Eichel has 1 power play goal and Hall has 1 power play goal, I feel like, Russ, we saw both of them in Philly. Like, didn't we see one of those power play goals?
Eichel did not play. I don't think he played both games in Philly.
But in Hall, didn't Hall score a power play goal in Philly? I'm pretty sure he did.
They were 0 for 5 in one of the games.
Right. So this team, they have scored. Okay, they've scored 44 goals in their games, okay, in the NHL this year. 44 goals. 25 of them at 5-on-5. They played 19 games. So they have 19 power play goals and 25 5-on-5 goals.
Well, how many goals does Olofsson have, Mike? Around
7.
Olofsson has 7. Reinhart has 6. That's 13 power play goals between the two of them. Those two are just killing it.
Players, yeah.
But then Reinhart has like 1 even strength goal.
Well, here I'll give you. You probably looked it up, so I'll give Ross. Ross, I'll buy your wings the next time you're in Buffalo if you can tell me who is Olofsson and Reinhart have 7 goals. Who is third on the Sabres in goals?
In overall goals.
Overall goals.
I'm going to go something wacky like Curtis Lazar.
You suck.
That's right.
Curtis Lazar.
Thank you for the wings, Mike.
Yeah. How many does Lazar have?
Anchor bar, and you won't come out alive.
Lazar has how many goals?
4.
Okay, so you're talking about like, I mean, these are. So you can sit there and talk about. Last week I tried to defend as best I could this scratching of Skinner and saying like, okay, there's got to be something there that we don't know.
Yeah, you tried. You were trying.
And the GM and the owner have to be okay with this because otherwise the coach would be fired by now. And you can even write off the whole Skinner situation for a second. Write off as like Skinner is a jerk. He's like, he stole Krueger's hamster. Whatever you want to think. Whatever happened there, I don't know. But and Skinner's not a jerk. But let's just write that whole thing off. Like he deserves to be scratched for some reason. You can't get past the 3 goals by Eichel and Hall, and you can't get past the 25 even strength goals. Like there's no way a coach should survive this. And there's
I will give you the reason why that he will probably survive this. First of all, essentially Kevin Adams is the gopher for Ralph Krueger. Krueger is the general manager de facto, but Kevin Adams is basically here. Hey, here, Kevin, here's my shopping list, and Kevin Adams goes out and fills it.
Yeah.
So, That's one reason. Second reason is he's got another year in his contract at $4 million in a pandemic where all these teams are losing money.
Yeah.
I seriously doubt whether he gets fired, period, that he doesn't fill out the rest of the – this is an organization who doesn't buy out players. They didn't buy out –
Well, one of my best sources, you probably saw what I wrote, but I'll repeat it. One of my best sources in Buffalo, who I've trusted for years, who's been around the team forever, my text to him is, think Krueger might be in trouble? This was yesterday at 9:30 at night. His response is, nope. Krueger and Adams will continue to coexist. The team has not played well in 8 games since the return to play from COVID. The players will pay the price. There will be a trade and perhaps a waiver soon, but Krueger and Adams will continue to coexist. Him saying that we will continue to coexist, I thought was an interesting phrasing coming from this guy, because it's not like he didn't say that Krueger will be fired. It's that Krueger and Adams will continue to coexist. That means that Krueger is not Adams' call, Mike. Like you're saying basically what they're saying is that
it's Pegula's call.
Right, it's Pegula's call. So Adams has no power in this thing at all, like you said. And you're sitting back so that's Pegula sitting there. And even as Pegula, I don't care if this is like the greatest coach of all time. I don't care if this guy won you 5 Stanley Cups in a row. You cannot have these kind of numbers. Like these numbers are just, it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't, all respect. And you guys know, I've been a Ralph Krueger. I was a proponent. I thought this was a great guy to bring into this team. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter at this point. Like
what you're saying is true, Eck, but they're not in a rush to do anything about it.
Right. And see, here's the main concern. Okay. Because remember, this is a franchise that has missed the playoffs 10 straight years. With this year, they're going to miss the playoffs. It'll be 10 straight years. Which is astonishing in
it's a great hockey market. They have no trouble getting players to go there.
In a hockey market like Buffalo, that the fact that they've gone a decade without making the playoffs is obscene.
But I feel like this feels like the low point, Mike, right now. Like this feels like
there's been a number of low points. I mean,
they were bad before, but they weren't.
But
they didn't have the best players doing this.
This is just the latest of the low points. But the thing is, it's like I don't know whether there's the will from this organization and this ownership to do what needs to be done to get them to change. And this is what I'm saying. Like, okay, for example, I understand Oposo was a contract that was signed in that year. I think it was 2016 with all the complete busts. Lucic and Louis Eriksson and Franz Nielsen, and all those contracts were heavy signing bonuses. So there's no great savings in terms of buyouts. Well, okay, Oposo, I think, is entering the last year of the deal, and it's not all signing bonus. And he really is not a contributor. He's got 1 assist in 14 games. If you're going to go youth, if you're going to rebuild, then you know what? A guy like Kyle Oposo is taking a valuable spot on a 23-man roster. You buy him out and you let your kids play. So I mean that's one move. The other thing is like when you switch from general manager to coach to coach, you signed Skinner when Botterill was the general manager, when Housley was the coach, when Skinner was playing top line minutes with Jack Eichel. Then you fire Housley. You bring in Krueger, you change general managers, and now Krueger doesn't like Skinner, and now you've got a $9 million player for 6 more years who he's playing on the 4th line and giving him fourth line minutes, playing him 10 minutes a night. I mean, that's a symptom of a dysfunctional, idiotic organization. And really, it's like it's not just me that's calling them out. No. I mean, obviously, I'm calling them out. We're all calling them out. I mean, because and you've been calling them out for a while, and granted, and so other people too.
Yeah, we both, Mike and I both have. Yeah,
and I try to sit there and defend these things. And I try to not get into the money part of it. To me, I'm like, okay, we got guys make what they make. Let's put together the best hockey team we can. Like that's, to me, I've always been about that, because I think that although you have to as a GM think about how much you're getting for value and all that, at the end of the day, these are your 23 guys. What do we got? What can we put together? Like if Skinner can play goalie, let's put him in goal. Like I'm like, at this point, they have to find a creative out. They have to find a creative way out of this. There's no easy way out of this. They have to find a creative way to figure something out to really mess things up. Like I don't care. Put Eichel play Eichel and Hall as a defensive pairing one night.
Well, but here's the issue that the organization has to deal with. I mean, first of all, again, Krueger's got another year left at I think $4 million. So are they going to eat that money and go out and hire a new coach? Probably not. That means that he's going to get another kick at the can next year, but there's going to be a dramatic change in the roster. You look at the roster right now, Taylor Hall, as Kevin said a couple weeks ago, he's a no-move clause, but he's probably going to want to go somewhere so he can play in the playoffs and improve his value for free agency. So you got him. You've got Eric Stahl, who will probably get traded. You got Brandon Montour, who will probably get traded because they're all UFAs. But the thing you have to be concerned about from the point of Krueger and ownership is something like the piece that I just read this morning from Fluto Shinzawa from The Athletic regarding speculation about Eichel. Because this is a complete and utter rebuild if Eichel says, "Get me the F out of here." And that's the thing they have to be worried about. And based on looking at his puss when I'm watching the post game, this guy's not happy. This team is a cluster.
You see when he skates on the ice, like in between like faceoffs, you just see it out there, But you see it better in the Zoom calls after the show, but after the game, after the game. But I think that. Yeah, it is a bizarre situation. Eichel, that Eichel and Hall are doing what they're doing and playing together is just astonishing to me. Like that Hall, who is on his contract year, is doing what he's doing is astonishing to me. Like there's certain things that are just.
It's all broken down, Eck. I mean, Darlene's frustrated. He said yesterday it's embarrassing. It shouldn't be up to a 20-year-old to come out and speak about how bad the team is. 21-year-old and
he's got one goal. Darlene Darlene's got one goal. Like one goal.
And this is the other
defenseman, but still he's like at least a 10-goal defenseman.
And this is the other thing you have to be concerned about the way the team is playing right now. You've got a core group of youngsters, not the core group of the team, but a core group of youngsters, the future core group of the team. Darlene, who's 21, Dylan Cousins, Casey Middlestad, Henry Yokoharu, all under the age of 22. They're all struggling this year. Darlene is the worst plus minus in the NHL at minus 18.
Yeah, which kills him because he's like
this is killing their confidence and their development. It's like, okay, if you have to trade some of these guys, like if they trade Sam Reinhart at the end of this year instead of paying him because they signed him to a 1-year contract extension, okay, then you know what? Those players are going to have to step up, and they're not really being developed, in a good way. They're getting pounded because they're losing. And what kind of effect is it going to have on them going forward?
We have to ask ourselves now, what is Taylor Hall really worth? Because I'm a huge Hall guy. Like I felt like I wrote one time that his skating style, like the way upright skating style, and the way he came down the wing in Edmonton reminded me of Mark Messier. He has that, like the way he would fly down the wing. He has, about that. You see that, don't you? Like the skating, the way he
a little bit occasionally
skates upright and has that. When he's confident, he's got the thing going. But really, now we're looking at a player that since he was MVP has been just absolutely terrible in the NHL.
He hasn't fit in.
I think you saw. I think you saw bits and pieces of that in Arizona. He was. I think at times he was not dominant, but at times he was pretty good. Well, the thing,
very rarely, Mike. Very rarely.
He hasn't fit in anywhere really.
Right, the best you saw out of Hall was probably in the bubble in the playoffs for Arizona, and that was
the thing that's going to mitigate his value in terms of a trade is going to be his no move clause because he's going to go anywhere he wants to go. Yeah. He's not going to care where Buffalo can get the most value. He's going to care where he wants to go and where he thinks he can maximize his value for a free agent run in the summer. And the only thing the Sabres can do to increase their return is retain 50% salary. So if they make Taylor Hall a $4 million player at the deadline, I think that they can probably get a first-round pick, and
they will find someone who will probably take on his salary. But I think, and I know even with this, which is crazy because people are going to just look at okay, he's playing on a bad team. But I would sit back and I'd argue he's playing with Jack Eichel. Like he's not. You can sit there. He's playing with Jack Eichel. Forget he's playing on a bad team. He's playing every first power play. He's playing every first line. He's playing.
A lot of things get askew, Eck, when the blue line's not right, when your offense isn't right. Yes, he's playing on the line with those guys, but when it starts creeping into the team and then you're not thinking you're getting the best goaltending, it does affect everybody.
Confidence is such a crazy thing in hockey. It's like there's nothing there of all the sports. I think really, I honestly feel like like a quarterback or whatever can go up and down confidence wise. Basketball players, there's a lot of confidence in shooting and stuff like that. Guys taking shots and feeling comfortable taking shots and hitting shots. But there's nothing like confidence in a hockey player that can take a hockey player from a $2 million player to a $10 million player back to a $2 million player at any point. You know what I mean? Like it's just like Hall really has now not proven that he's anything more than like a $4 million player over the last 3 years. And that is really something that we never thought we would say. Like, honestly, what MVP can fall that far? But he hasn't shown, and you can sit there and say he hasn't
shown it enough. I tend to agree with that.
And it's kind of crazy. He could be the best value in the UFA market this summer, because still, like, if he goes to Calgary, which I still is where I think he's going to go, but at some point Calgary's going to be like, we're not going to pay you that much money either. I mean, there's no one's going to give him what he wants right now. No one's going to give him more than $6 million at this point, which is like. And that's even incredibly high. I mean, that's unbelievably high. You're not going to pay $3 million per goal.
Which might be the reason why there was talk a couple weeks ago about there being mutual interest between him and the Sabres, because maybe Sabres would pay him closer to what he's making right now. But I'll reiterate what they would have to do in that instance. Even though they have $35 million in cap space next summer, is they would either have to buy out Oposo, who's got 2 more years at $6 million, but I believe that most of the signing bonus is gone already, or find someone to take Skinner off their hands. And the only way they can do that is to get Skinner to waive his no move clause. And I will bet you anything right now, Eck, that Newport Sports and Don Meehan, they recognize how Skinner has been treated in Buffalo, and they're going to dig in and they're going to say no friggin' way.
More than that, Mike, they just realize that they can wait out Krueger. I mean, that's what they're going to do. They're going to be like, there's no point in us. We want to get out of here, but you know what? It's like the Krueger, he's not going to play us. It's like not a win-win, but it's like he doesn't play us. We continue to not play poorly. He's gone, and they can wait. Skinner's not going to accept a trade right now because Krueger is on his last lives here.
Now, here's an indicator, a subtle indicator of the state of where things are in Buffalo. Linus Ullmark is out for a month. Their goaltending tandem right now is an inexperienced Jonas Johansson and a well-experienced but bad Carter Hutton. Alex Stalock was on waivers yesterday. Had a good year last year with Minnesota, had some health issues. Finally back, he had to be placed on waivers by Minnesota. Buffalo has the first pick in the waiver claim. They let him go by, and he gets picked up by Edmonton. If the Sabres thought they had any chance of climbing back into the playoff race, they would have claimed Stalock because they have a goalie who's out for a month. But I would think that they didn't claim him because why spend $1 extra of more money? They've got Dustin Tokarski, who they can bring up if Johansson can't handle it. So there's the awe-inspiring pairing of Hutton and Dustin Tokarski.
Okay, so I want to move away from them for a second and go to the Mass Mutual East for a bit.
Can you just say the East, please?
Yes, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. The G. Your hair smells terrific East. I forgot. Okay, so
the Taco Bell East.
No, the I can't believe it's not butter West and the G. Your hair smells terrific East. Okay, so the G. Your hair smells terrific East really has turned into 4-4 in my mind.
Mm-hmm. No, it's still a 5-team race.
I don't know. I mean, I understand the Penguins are there, but I'm watching them play. And then they're 6-4 in their last 10. I mean, that's true. I mean, they're in there. But it doesn't feel like they are at the same level. I mean, to me, the Caps, the Bruins, and the Flyers might be the best 3 teams in this division. But
what about the Flyers? The Islanders are probably as good as the Flyers. They just don't score as many goals.
The Islanders. I've watched the Islanders lately a lot. I've watched the Islanders all the time because I'm still pulling for Sorokin. Shout out against the Penguins yesterday. I'm still first goalie since 1989. With Kelly Rudy to shut out the Penguins. Kelly Rudy is the last guy that shut out the Penguins. for the Islanders. Anyway, some crazy stat like that. All right, so and he played really well, so we're gonna look great.
He's good. He's a good goalie.
He's gonna take over.
The Calder.
He's not taking over this year.
Yeah, Kaprizov, baby, Kaprizov.
All right, and I know I've been against the Capitals, but
yeah, I mean that one you're losing badly on.
I am losing badly on that one. But it's still early. It's 21.
But Russ is right. It's a 5-team race right
now. See, if you're going to give, but if you put the Penguins in, I'm putting the Rangers in still.
You can't put the Rangers in. Did you watch any of that game the other day when Boston, after the Rangers beat them 6-2, Boston came out and literally punched them in the mouth, punched Georgiev in the face, dominated every part of that game.
Yeah.
They beat them up. They outscored them, and then finally Lafreniere got an assist on a goal late. They killed the Rangers in that game. They did anything they wanted to.
If it wasn't for the fact that the Rangers are right now without their best forward from last year and their best defenseman from last year, and they have injuries.
Hito is hurting them too.
Right, and their injuries to their second best defenseman from last year, I would say you're right, but no. It's not. They're 6 points behind Pittsburgh. It's 23-17. That's going to be tough to make up, and they're playing shorthanded. So it's a 5-team race for 4 spots.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not counting Jersey out either. But
come on.
I'm not, man.
I know you're not, but
they're right there. I mean, they've got 3 games in hand. So I mean, come on. All right, but at the end of the day, the Islanders. I have a little concerns over watching the Islanders play. Not just, I mean, they won yesterday and they've won other games, but this Islanders team is starting to really. There's such a fine line when you play that Jersey Devil style.
Yeah, of course, but they know how to play that way. Here's what
if you stop scoring, you're in trouble.
I know, but you know what? They have more goals than goals against, and I know they have only 56 goals because I saw it this morning. But at the end of the day, right now, this moment, if you ask me who's better, the Islanders or the Flyers, I'm going to tell you it's the Islanders. And I'm going to tell you I trust their defense more, and I think I trust their goaltending more at this point. And so right now, you're talking about – and remember, Wahlstrom is starting to score now for them. He's starting to work their way in. That may help them down the line. Well, I mean, they
like him. He's a good. I like him. He's a good player. That they definitely
they weren't even using him last year. Dobson is in there now.
Yeah,
we haven't seen the best of the Islanders. They started off like crap, and yet I do think with the problems. Let's put it this way. Remember what we said with the Flyers, and we're going to not mention that other guy's name, but how basically their top 4 would be a skew all year.
Yeah,
we're 20-something games in, it's still a skew.
No, I agree. I don't disagree with you at all. I do think, though.
That's a problem.
I mean, there are some telling numbers with the Flyers. And there are some things when you watch them play. And then it was the Sabres this weekend, so they were playing an AHL team. But at the end of the day, 11-1-1 against everybody who's not the Bruins is something. I mean, that's and that one loss came to the Sabres, ironically enough. The one regulation.
Okay, I mean, that's good. I mean, there's no question. I mean,
the Bruins 0-3-1 against the 0-3-1 against the Bruins, but 11-1-1 against the rest of the division is significant. And that tells me that they played everybody. They played all the other teams. So to me, that's something that is the Capitals are they're hot right now, and they've taken they've won 3 in a row. But before that, they were also in danger. I mean, we had Kevin Allen on here 2 weeks ago and saying, he thought the Devils might finish in front of the Capitals. That's how much this changes, right? So, to me,
it could change. I even think beyond the Bruins, and the Bruins aren't scoring much. They've only scored 59 goals. But you know what? When the Bruins are playing you, this is the difference. We have to forget everything we knew about hockey pre this year because this is the NHL in isolation. Yeah. These are one divisions or one division leagues, I should really say. These are one division leagues. So in this Eastern League, right, I'm going to call it the Eastern League, the Bruins own everybody, which is a problem. The Leafs know what that's like when they face a team and all of a sudden they can't beat them. Right. So the Bruins own everybody. There's nobody – I mean, the Rangers beat them once really well, but nobody's beaten the Bruins. And then when you look at the rest, it's kind of like – it goes week to week. Now, the COVID list is finally emptying out for everybody, so we might get a better idea. But my big thing is this. When you have to play back-to-backs or 1 or 2 out of 3 against the Bruins, you're not sweeping them. And based on that, that is going to create chaos in the rest of that division for the rest of the year. And the Bruins still may not be the first place team, but they also
they're the playoff team. They are the playoff team.
They're a playoff team. They're a guaranteed playoff.
They are further ahead, and with the exception of the Capitals, who have some experience, obviously, in the playoffs and stuff like that. But everyone else, I mean, that they could play. Granted, the Penguins have, but I'm just saying that they versus the Flyers or the Islanders, the Bruins still own it. I mean, they own the experience. They own the playoffs.
It's not important for the Bruins to win the division, just like it's not important for Tampa to win their division. It's just important for them to finish someplace in that top 4 because they're an experienced and veteran team, enough veterans on that team that it doesn't matter if they're sleeping in a hotel room or in their own house when it comes to these playoff games. So, I mean, it really doesn't matter. And you can see like what's going on right now with we had Matt Kelman on Off the Post on the weekend, and this last week they gave up 7 goals, I think, to the Islanders, 5 goals to the Rangers. They had a bad week, but
they don't get phased by those things.
Right. They've been getting reasonably good goaltending out of Rask and Halak. Their defense has not been bad with the loss of Chara. And if you look at their forwards, a guy like Nick Ritchie, who a lot of people thought was pretty much done, has bounced back and has played well. And they'll always have Bergeron, Pasternak, and Marchand. So yeah, I mean, when May rolls around and the playoffs are in the offing, the Bruins are going to be there.
Yeah. Now switching over to the Cialis Western Division, the hottest team in hockey right now is the Minnesota Wild, 6 in a row, and second place now in the division, only 1 point behind the Vegas Golden Knights. And we all kind of felt like, I think we all sort of put Minnesota in 4th. We thought that they were the 4th team in this what looked like a 3-team division, right?
Well, there's the tightest race in the entire league. First place is 25 points. 6th place is 21 points. Right,
and it is close. I mean, they're granted you've got Vegas has 4 games in hand on Arizona in that race, but the Wild, who've only played 18 games, the thing that's really impressive about them, and this is where you really start to see the teams that are going to make the playoffs at this point, is when you start seeing the goal differentials. Like the Wild at a +13, that's a playoff team. Like when you're above a +10, you're a playoff team. And that's that means you're playing like a playoff team, and that means you're likely to be a playoff team. And I've always kind of felt that way. It's the goal differentials in this division are some of the widest though. Like Vegas +15, Minnesota +13, Colorado +13, and then Anaheim and San Jose are both like around -20. So you're looking at a big swing there. I think that the Wild are for real, and I think what you're seeing is finally the combination of a lot of the things that Billy Guerin's done there.
Well, Russ, the thing that has been a revelation for the Wild is we've been waiting for this young group to finally establish themselves and sort of take over. And okay, Kaprizov, they had to wait to get him from the KHL, but it's Greenway.
Watch though.
Sorry?
He's so much fun to watch, Kaprizov.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
But it's Greenway. It's Eriksson Ek.
Yeah.
It's Kevin Fiala, who they got in the trade from Nashville. Victor Rask is bouncing back.
Rask has done really well. Zuccarello's back on like a house on fire. He's
on fire right now. Yeah.
They moved out Mikko Koivu because he was, at the end of his career. They have, significant contract commitments still with Parise and Suter, and they're still providing secondary roles, but it's that younger group has finally sort of moved up and established themselves, and that's the reason why they're moving forward now.
Yeah, no, listen, you don't have to talk about the virtue. To me, I love Minnesota Wild, the way they're playing, the way they've been handled since last year. I think Guerin's done a great job. I think their defense is still solid. Is their goaltending the best that we've ever seen? No. And now that they lost Alex Stalock today to Edmonton, I think that's gonna hurt them a little bit. But Kakanen's a good goalie, so they're not gonna feel it right now. Stalock did get them in the playoffs last year, but it's a new year, so I think at the end of the day, they're in really good shape. What are they guaranteed? No. And they may have now made Edmonton better. That's the part where this transaction could really hurt them, because if Stalock gets a hold of that Edmonton job, and wins a few games for them that they weren't winning before, even if he doesn't ever become the starter, that's more wins for the Edmonton Oilers, and that's something where I don't think anybody realized. The other thing, to answer the chat room and Joe Morello, hey, if the Islanders swept Boston, that's great, but nobody's sweeping them a lot. They might be the only team in the division that have swept them all year, so whatever. If you think the Islanders can match Boston head-to-head, you're crazy, but that's okay.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the Wild, one of the brilliant moves that's going to not be really noticed is their move to the West, the Western Conference, the Western Division, I mean. Because not that the Central Division is, the Central Division, technically you would look at them, you're like, that's an easier division, right? But they match up better against teams in the Western Division, the way they're built.
Yeah.
And that's what's interesting about watching them play.
We have to talk about Jordan Binnington, because, he fake challenged the Edmonton bench, and then San Jose bench, and then he bumped Dubnyk, and Dubnyk didn't bite. Dubnyk's 6'7". He probably would crush Binnington if they actually fought. Dubnyk is a big guy, but Dubnyk sort of laughed it off at the end. And Binnington needs to do this once in a while. He is a guy that needs to blow off steam. In his Stanley Cup run, in the off day on one of the days, I don't remember what day it was. I think it was in Boston, though. So I remember we got great quotes out of him because he was just he was just shit talking everybody from the Bruins team. He was just in that kind of mood. He was shooting it. We all posted our stuff and sound bites and everything right away, and he ended up backing it up. This is what has to happen for him to get fired up when things aren't going well. So he has to create adversity. So he tried to create his own adversity on the ice.
But I have to say, based on something that you wrote a couple weeks ago, you can get away with losing your head like he did on the weekend playing San Jose. When you play for St. Louis, you cannot get away with that if you're playing in Toronto.
Yeah, that's true.
It will not work.
No, it's true. It's really true.
Can we talk about the Viagra North here, or
no? I was gonna. It's the Titanic restaurant in Toronto. It's the Titanic North. I'm going to call it. There actually is a restaurant in Toronto called the Titanic, which I think is hilarious. It's a Thai restaurant.
Never eat there.
So I'm going to call it the Titanic North.
I'm sure their plateware is wonderful.
Yeah. All right. Talking about the Titanic North, or as we like to call it, the Canadian division. This is I just hate to do this, but I have to finally give in to the fact that the Winnipeg Jets are good. I've been trying my best to keep saying Winnipeg Jets aren't good. They're not going to be there. They're not in this battle. They're not going to be one of these four teams, because I just didn't see it. Especially after the line, I thought, man, they're really going down the wrong way. They're really.
And if Kevin Cheveldayoff pulls off a deal for April 12th for a defenseman, for a top four defenseman, that'll make them even more of a tough out. And I think they're going to make the playoffs. I think Russ and I both predicted they were going to make the playoffs. But now they have that 1-2 punch up the middle.
Yep.
Of Scheifele and Dubois, which can compete with Draisaitl and McDavid, which can compete with Matthews and Tavares in Toronto, which can, I think, better what Vancouver or Montreal or Ottawa has up the middle.
Yeah.
And you've got a Vezina Trophy winning goaltender in Hellebuck. If they can add to Pionk and Morrissey on the blue line, they will be tough. It will be very tough.
And look, my prediction of back-to-back Vezinas for Connor Hellebuck is not out of the realm. He's got
he's pretty good for that, I have to say.
Yeah.
No, I'd say that's pretty solid right now. It is. Hellebuck is really, he's obviously a great goalie.
He doesn't get the credit because he's not super flashy.
And I admit that I'm partially blamed for that kind of stuff because I don't like this style of goaltender. I think that they can be beaten by certain kinds of teams.
No, but mentally, I don't know if he could be beaten. I'm going to tell you again. I was on the call for the Vezina call last year, right?
Yeah.
And somebody asked Hellebuck, "Well, hey Connor, you're winning it this year. That's great. Who of your peers, who would you pick to win it next year?" He goes, "Why would I pick anybody other than me to win it next year? I'm going to win it next year." And if you think about that is the right answer.
Sure.
That's right. Exactly. I think and there's confidence. I like that confidence.
Yes.
Now the Leafs being 12 points in the playoffs right now, like
the Mets are fine. The Mets are losing already in 2021. I just have to point that out. Go ahead, go.
the Leafs are 12 points into the playoffs in 22 games, which is the equivalent of being like 20 games into the 20 points into the playoffs in a regular season at this point.
Right.
I mean, the Leafs don't have anything to play for.
No, that's not true. See, again, a couple of injuries. I still think divisions could be turned upside down because every game is a 4-point game.
No, you're right about that, but 12 points is a
I know, but it's not as much as in previous years when you were only playing those teams.
34 games. There's 34 games left, so there's 34 games left for the Leafs. Think about that.
But complacency is death.
Oh yeah, this is death, and nothing matters to anybody in Toronto. Like they could finish with
Yeah, Austin Matthews could score 50 goals in 56 games. They could finish with 80 points, and if they lose in the first round this year is a friggin' disaster. So now,
here's a scenario. I'll give a scenario that Mike can comment on it.
Okay.
So based on the move that Montreal made, what if they all of a sudden slip? What if all of a sudden Vancouver does get hot? Because they do have talent there. When they trade Jake Virtanen, what all of a sudden if they get hot? These things affect every team in the division. It's not like the Leafs are insulated from that.
Right.
Agreed. I agree.
Yeah. So right now, the matchup of the weekend, was the battle for first and second between the vaunted Edmonton Oilers and the Leafs. And the Leafs without Freddie Anderson and without Austin Matthews, and they wiped up the floor with the Oilers. Now that's not to say that that's going to happen tonight because McDavid and Draisaitl were held scoreless, and I'm sure they're going to play a lot better than they did on Saturday. But here's the thing: Edmonton was, I think, 10-2 in their last 12 games. They had won 5 games in a row.
Yep.
Mike Smith is not Terry Sawchuk.
Well, you're also you have to sit back and say that the Toronto Maple Leafs, with or without Austin Matthews, are a freaking good offensive team, and they are going to do this. They're going to do this to teams on occasion. Like this is just
true.
Right.
I mean, to me, they're 10-2 in the last 12 games is way more significant than the fact that they got blown out last night.
My point, Zach, is that Mike Smith at age 39 is not a .944 save percentage goaltender.
Even what's really funny, Ek? Even that game the other night when Edmonton was winning, he still looked uncomfortable in net, Mike Smith. Yeah. There were some moments where he was down, he had the puck, he didn't have the puck, he didn't know where the puck was. It went behind him. He's like looking like he really looked lost, even though he was winning the game.
And I think part of that, and I got to go pretty soon, sorry guys, but I think part of that here is also that Mike Smith has that Oilers play so scrambly in front of him that sort of plays into it. Like having a solid defense that plays more calm and reserved. It's as a goalie, when you have a scrambly defense, you end up playing scrambly in goal because you have the same sort of, you don't know what's happening. There's all kinds of things on. But Mike Smith has done a very good job at adjusting to that.
Well, I'll finish with this point because I know you got to go. I did the Laidlaw Allen podcast this morning, and we're talking about Edmonton and Toronto, and Tom Laidlaw, who played in the league for 11 years, knows that this is the case. The Leafs have been guilty over the last 5 or 6 years, especially, of being horrible defensively. But it's not been just their defense. It's been their forwards not buying in and not kicking in defensively in their own zone.
Right.
The Leafs have started to do that this year, especially Austin Matthews winning puck battles and helping out the defense behind the goal line. Edmonton is still doing what the Leafs have done over the last few years. You don't see McDavid and Draisaitl fighting in the defensive zone, fighting for the puck. They're expecting to get the puck and fly out of the zone. And until they do that, they're not going to win.
Yeah. Listen. I mean, they are winning. They are winning without that. But at the same time, this is not the greatest division in the world. And yes, are they going to win in the playoffs? No. And do they match up well against the Leafs in the playoffs? No. I mean, the Leafs definitely match up well against the Oilers. That's the kind of team the Leafs want to play in the playoffs. But there's other teams that the Leafs don't match up so well against.
Cam Young is mad at you, Mike.
Yeah,
the Oilers do some kind of respect, and they do. They
absolutely do. I mean, it's impossible to sit there and say that they aren't the second best team in that division because I really think they are.
I mean, right now the way they're playing, they are. Right now, they are.
And they really feel like when you watch them. I mean, all they need. They need. I mean, if McDavid and Draisaitl are what they are, they don't need a whole lot more to be the second best team in that division. That's
they would do that all year straight through. That's true.
I mean, So I'm not saying that they're a good team, because that's not a good division in general. But when we talk about Winnipeg, they could easily catch them. They could be the second best team in that division. I think Montreal made a big mistake in their coaching thing, and I think it's
I do too. I think they may have upset the whole apple cart.
I think they may have upset the whole apple cart and put the cart before the horse, basically, by thinking that they're better than they are, too soon, too fast. But I really have to go. I'm sorry, guys. I have a big meeting for my kid.
We seem to have started a war anyhow in the chat room with now the North.
We'll definitely finish that war tomorrow. Okay. Please join us again tomorrow on the Hockey Buzzcast. Again, thanks to Hart at Puckpedia. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to